when I knew I was ahead and she seconded. Call to order. Today is the Albany Police Review Board meeting, April 9th at 6:06 p.m. Roll call beginning with Julie. Member Julie.
Present.
Mark? Victor? Dr. Jones? And I, the presiding officer, Warren, is present. Can someone, I guess the presiding officer can offer a motion, so I want to offer a motion to accept the minutes, move to approve the minutes. January 2026.
I'll second the motion.
Call for a vote. All those in favor? Any abstentions? All voted affirmatively. Now we're going to enter our public comment period. There are none for public comment, so we will move on to communication from the City of Albany.
Good evening, everyone. Give me just a moment. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? I'm going to be presenting the community survey that was conducted between the beginning of December and January the 15th of this year, related to specific questions on operations of the CPRB. The CPRB created a survey and launched it to seek community input on two distinct topics. The first topic was how to address the complaint review backlog that the CPRB currently possesses. And the second was to whether or not the Common Council should, or whether or not the board should make a recommendation to the Common Council to adjust the membership requirements for board members, specifically whether or not there should be consideration to remove the prohibition on APD officers, former employees, or their family members from serving on the board. As it currently stands, the law prohibits former APD employees and their immediate family members from ever being a member of this board. The survey, as I said, was launched on December the 1st of 2025, and it was open until January the 15th of 2026. We received a total of 55 responses over the course of that 45 days. The first question was presented to the community in this way with the background. It explained how the CPRB was responsible for reviewing the Office of Professional Standards work product in terms of their investigative complaint reviews, and that we have 120 days to make a recommendation in order for that recommendation to be considered by the administration of the police department prior to them imposing discipline or finalizing outcomes. If we fail to meet that 120-day time frame, the law says the police department does not need to wait on recommendations from the board to proceed to the next steps in the disciplinary process. At the time the survey was launched, there were currently 68 complaints pending review by this board. 43 of those complaints were already beyond the 120-day review period. At the time this survey was launched, there had been 80 complaints received in 2025. Out of the 55 all 55 respondents provided a response to question 1. They were afforded 3 options. The top choice, or the top response that we received, was that the CPRB should close all complaints that are beyond that 120-day window, to to allow for more timely work on CPRB complaints that are newer. That was 42 out of the 55 respondents chose that option. 32 of the 55 respondents ranked the second option of being that the CPRB should roll into and come up with a program to review the complaints beyond the 120 days in a timely, beyond 120 days in a manner in which would not impact the timeliness review of more complaints. The third choice was to continue operating as normal, which would result in the ongoing increase of the complaint review backlog. The survey also requested comments or afforded respondents to provide comments. 14 of the 55 participants provided comments in response to the first question. 14 of those participants who said to allow for to dispose of those complaints, their comments were as follows. Complaints that cannot result in discipline due to timing should be closed. The CPRB should ensure members of the board have outside legal representation. It is a lot to ask volunteer board members to expose themselves to legal liability. This will attract new members and free up the backlog. How does it help anyone to waste time on things that you can't actually change? It makes no sense to spend time on things the law says you can't do. You should be following the law as required. The law says close the complaints after 120 days, so they should be closed. If past members weren't getting their work done, that is not a current member issue. Law seems to say close the complaint after 120, so why is this even a question? Stop wasting time and get to work on complaints that are, workout complaints are old and need to be addressed. Don't you think the law is clear on what must happen? Don't waste time on things you can't change. Oh wait, that seems to be what the board does. Way to show up for the community. Only one real choice, comply with the law. Please follow the law. That's why rules exist. It's the CPRB's fault. Y'all need to own this. Otherwise, you will lose public trust. Stop blaming City Hall. Stop blaming the Common Council for previous lack of leadership. Get outside counsel via an RFP. Immediately fill positions after background checks and get the program running properly. How about doing some work? The board only talked about cases like 4 times last year. What a joke. No wonder there's an issue. 2 months without a meeting and you review 4 complaints, no wonder there's a backlog. You cannot even review complaints when there's nothing else to do. This board is a joke and should be disbanded. It will save the city almost $700,000 that can be used actually to make things better. Of the participants that selected, 3 participants provided comment who ranked reviewing complaints as we have the capacity to do so. Their replies were, review the process on handling, perhaps batch by officer, by type, or by neighborhood. Establish short and longer, more in-depth reviews. There is some context I do not have. For example, if the complexity of the cases in the queue causes backlogs or delays, however, if there is a prioritization system based on the level or severity, this could enable reviews to be done quickly, and those with more intensity or more escalated could go beyond the time frame if there was a system dictating that. Feel free to reach out and discuss more of this idea. I will note that the survey was anonymous, so there is no way to contact the individual respondent, so there was no way to reach out. I am beyond frustrated at this backlog, especially given the amount of videos I have seen of the Albany Police Department this year. 2 participants who said the board should just continue as process. The CPRB should also continue prioritizing complaints based off the severity of the alleged APD actions that led to the complaint. Any other option would allow some complainant to be ignored. Based off of the survey results, it appears that the overwhelming majority of the individuals that responded favor a disposition of just disposing of the 120-day complaints that are beyond 120 days old without a substantive review by the board. However, the survey is intended to inform board membership's decision. Board membership, as we progress through this year, will engage in conversations on how to address the complaint backlog. Question number 2 was the information related to employees or members of the board and the member makeup. As discussed, Current city law prohibits any former employee of the Albany Police Department and their immediate family member from ever serving on the board. While the CPRB acknowledges there is an inherent conflict of interest in allowing current employees of the police department to serve and their family members to serve on the board, there is an argument to be made that APD employees and their family members are members of this community. This board represents the community as a whole, and there can be valuable information learned from people that were employees of law enforcement agencies that can help this board and its membership do the work of this board. However, I, as the program director, would caution allowing former members of the police department to join immediately upon separation. Part of the reason there should be some form of a delay is to allow those personal relationships that are formed over long-term employment to age out of the system. The community was provided with 4 separate options and asked to select one. The options were no, they should never be allowed to serve at all. Yes, they should be allowed to serve without limitations. Yes, but the law should be changed to allow membership after a period of 10 years. And yes, the law should be changed to allow membership after a period of 10 years and only for one CPRB member to be a former employee or immediate family member at the same time. All 55 participants responded to this question. 21 of the 55, or roughly 38% of the participants, chose to allow former APD employees and their immediate family members to serve after a period of 10 years. 17, or 30% of the participants, chose to allow a former APD employee and their immediate family member to serve without limitation. So that would allow an employee to resign or retire from the police department today and be appointed to the board next week. 9 of the participants, or 16%, chose to allow former APD employees and their immediate family members to serve as a member after a period of 10 years, and for only one member of the board to be a former APD employee or their immediate family member. And only 8% of the participants said the status quo should stay and there should be an absolute bar to former APD employees being on the board. The participants who selected they should be allowed without limitations made the following comment. The council and the mayor should each be allowed to include one former APD employee or immediately family member, leading to 2 such members among the total of 9 among the appointees. Members should be allowed after a period of 5 years. It is not a community board if you exclude community members without a true conflict of interest. The only limit should be current employees and family, just like it is for city employees. Let's put cops and robbers on the board. I mean, why not? At least things will be different, but nothing will get done, like always. Who cares? This board is a joke. It needs to be dissolved. Funny, you can't even hold a meeting correctly. What a joke. 5 participants who selected, yes, the law should be changed and allow for membership after a period of 10 years and only one member at a time. I like the bottom 2 options. Despite there being valuable insight and expertise of a former cop, they could have been incorporated as a non-voting member. The risk is too great for bias. I hate to prohibit service altogether, but it seems duplicitous for the initial review to come from OPS and then have a former APD is functioning as a filter. It concerns me as a resident, the Police Review Board, members who have resigned this year. All members of the community should be allowed to apply for membership. The overall purpose of the board is to assess and actually review policy and procedure. While on-the-job experience can be an invaluable resource in this regard, the foremost priority needs to be the actions of the department members. Anything that could lead to overly weighted bias in either direction when reviewing should be avoided, and limiting board member affiliation is crucial to that end. We also received 4 comments we received additional comments from 4 responders who said the only limitation should be a period of 10 years. I would shorten the period to 5 years and allow family members upon retirement of the employee. 10 years seems like a lengthy period. Former APD might provide insight into protocols and procedures that could help guide the CPRB. Officers are members of the community, which is required to be represented. Immediately family members seem more problematic. They may have personal relationships with current APD members, but lack the policing practices and knowledge of former officers. Felons on the board should be matched with cops. Make sure laws are followed. They can watch each other. One participant responded related to never allowing APD members to be a member of the board. You haven't established that the reason for the backlog is insufficient board members, so this doesn't seem relevant. In response to that specific comment, in case if the responder is listening, the backlog is not a result of lack of membership. The backlog is a result of progressing the complaints in a timely manner. The surveys are going to be, the survey results are already published on the Agenda Center for the CPRB. They're published with the announcement for this meeting. They will also be published with the meeting minutes for this meeting. Are there any questions from membership related to this presentation? I will note that the comments that were provided, some of them came in after our January meeting, in which members of the community were able to see our January meeting, and that's why some of those comments were made.
Garrett, I did have one comment. I probably mentioned it before, but I'm in favor of that overall 120-day notice that seems like the public was in favor of. If they expired, they expired, and that's my position.
I understand that. So the purpose of the presentation tonight was to provide the information to the public and the board membership in an official capacity. Going forward, this will be a topic of conversation in subsequent meetings for the membership to discuss and debate, especially as we get new members. My ultimate goal initially was to have a resolution to this matter sometime towards the end of this year, because it is going to be a substantive, impactful decision. In addition to the survey results, I have updates related to our complaint numbers. As of this meeting, there are currently 165 open complaints in the possession of the CPRB. Of those 165 complaints, 42 of them are with the police department pending their action in some form or fashion. 123 of the complaints are pending member action by this board. Of those 123 complaints, 103 of them are already 120 days old or older as of tomorrow morning. 4 of those 103 will be disposed of or resolved tonight through presentations from board members. There is a remaining 20 that are less than 120 days old. 4 of those complaints will pass the 120-day limit 4 of those complaints will pass the 120-day limit between our May meeting and our June meeting, so they will need to be reviewed in May to still be considered timely. All of the other complaints will not pass that 120-day meeting period until either our June or July meeting. In addition to the complaint numbers, I also have a report on staffing. The CPRB and the Common Council extended an offer, and the offer was accepted to fill our confidential secretary role. They are on track to be onboarded and participating as a staff member on the 27th of April. There may be slight delays, but we are on track to hit that date. Once the confidential secretary is in place and is up to speed and is able to assume some of the day-to-day complaint operations, I will begin the process of coordinating interviews for our 2 investigator roles so we can have our in-house investigators on site. Are there any questions from membership about either the complaint numbers and or our staffing issues?
Nope.
All right, I return it to you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you. Next is new business, and the 5 of us here just have a quick conversation about what we think we might want to do about nominations. It is not executive session like it was in our prior meeting, so it's an open meeting conversation where we're not going to get too deep, but I guess say some thoughts about what we might think about officer nominations. Any member have any comments or feedback? Alrighty, none for that one. So the second new business is discussion on selecting legal service providers. We've had that, a lot of you all are very new, so you haven't had it, but this topic has been on the agenda for a few meetings now, and we haven't had a chance to really talk about it. So Do any of the members here have any comments about the legal services providers?
For some background, the CPRB issued a request for proposal to secure outside counsel. We received responses from 2 firms. Neither firm is located here in the city of Albany. One of the firms is located in Washington, D.C. and is not licensed in the state of New York. The other firm is located in the capital area and can provide legal services. However, the board is not required to make a decision on whether or not we want to proceed with either one of those firms or reissue the request for proposal this evening. The item was on the agenda to provide the board membership the opportunity to make a selection if they so desired, but they were not required to do so.
The last thing you just said, you mean make an informal selection or just what we think, because we're not going to make the actual selection? No?
The purpose of the agenda item was for you to discuss the responses and whether or not you wanted to make a selection, you wanted to reissue the RFP, or if you wanted to postpone that discussion for a future date.
All right, so anybody have any comments to that regard? Or feedback? Julia?
I don't think we should make a decision at this time. It sounds as though we have new membership potentially coming on board, and we should give them opportunity to review and come up to date with the information we have.
Okay, my only comment is that the timeliness of us getting a counsel is important. So that is definitely something that we want to try our best to get resolved. The case was pending for a while, but not having our own counsel is definitely not something that we want to linger if we can help it.
And I do want to clarify for the board membership that in the event that there is a legal specific question that arises, you can submit that question to me. If I am unable to answer that question, I will provide it to the necessary legal entities within the city, specifically Robert Winter, the Common Council's Research Council, to provide legal input. I am not seeking legal advice when I have a legal question directly from the Corporation Counsel's office. I am seeking it from the Common Council's legal representative, as we are part of the Common Council and not the executive branch of government.
Right. Yeah, I didn't want it to seem as though we have no representation. We just wouldn't have our own specific for the CPRB. We are definitely covered by the General Counsel. One other point on that, and again, we're not going to make the decision now, but reissuing an RFP definitely does not seem like the most favorable option, especially if we have a timeliness issue. And also we have someone who apparently successfully completed the bid, so I don't know if that's a great idea to reissue, but there's something we'll talk about. The next item in new business is discussion of selecting an investigative service provider. This is our investigators. Any comments? I'll start with you, Victor, since you are the most senior person here, if you have any comments.
Are you asking
The Julie Shorts thing. You have any feedback on the investigations? The fact that we're trying to hire a new investigator and we already have a current one who was there and their contract expired. Julie Swartz firm, I'm not sure of her name, the firm's name off the top of my head. T&M?
Correct. So in response to this request for proposal, we received 3 responses. One from the firm that has been providing services to this board since the board received investigative authority, and then 2 additional firms. We have not talked to any of them yet. The purpose of this conversation was for y'all to have reviewed the responses that were provided to you over the several last few months and determine, just like with the outside counsel, whether or not we want to select any one of the 3 providers that responded, whether or not we want to postpone that for further conversation, or whether we want to reissue the RFP. My recommendation to this board is that we should select the firm that has already provided the services, since we are also in the process of bringing in-house the investigative system. So the whole purpose of having an outside firm provide the investigation services is to supplement the in-house provision. Once we have the investigators in-house and hired on staff, we will no longer need to rely upon a vendor to provide those investigation services. So since we would have to create the process by selecting any one of the new firms, not using the original firm that we have, which was Ms. Schwartz from T&M, we would have issues with having to redevelop the process anyways.
Okay. So, no matter what, we can't have one of the members from the old board. These are all new. We have to choose a completely new person.
No, sir. One of the responders was Julie Schwartz's firm, T&M LLC, T&M USA LLC from New York City. Her firm did provide a response to the request for proposal. So that is one of the options that this board can select. And that would be my recommendation, is if the membership is looking to select a firm to provide investigation services, and there's not a requirement for you to do so because we're in the process of hiring investigative staff, my recommendation would be to select the firm that developed the investigation process that we will use and build upon internally once we have staff in place.
Julie, she referred a firm to us, is that correct?
Her firm provided a response to the proposal. So if the board membership decides to select an investigations firm to provide services to the board, her firm, T&M, is one of the options to select.
I would like to, is there possible we can hold off on? Is it possible that we can hold off on it, or we have to choose today?
No, the item is on the agenda because it's been on the agenda since January.
Okay.
If membership is not prepared to discuss or make a selection tonight, then we will postpone it for a future date. I believe Member Morris's explanation as to why we shouldn't select a legal service provider should also apply to this process as well. We have 2 members, so this is their first meeting, and we are in the process of potentially getting additional members on the board in the coming weeks and months.
I would like to wait until we have a complete full staff before choosing.
I believe, I agree with that. I also think that the investigator is not as sensitive right this second as us having our own counsel, but it's very important what Garrett said a couple times, that the firm T&M, Julie Schwartz, who was the current provider, developed the methodology. And part of what he had said was that when the new staff come on, they will be trained in the process. So our current investigator would be like training the trainer of sorts, or training our people. So it would not be a very good idea to hire a totally new firm who has no process to do this. Also, the person or the firm T&M who did it for, as Garrett just said, since we transitioned, is the one who sent in a bid. So, you know, we didn't grade those bids, but it would be probably the best decision once we get moving forward that T&M firm probably has a leg up for obvious reasons. No more comment on that new business?
Just want to ask, how long have you already had this investigative firm already that's currently in place?
So T&M was contracted by the CPRB 5 years ago when the CPRB received investigative powers and authorities with the passage of Local Law J. Their contract expired at the end of December and was not eligible to be renewed because of the way the contracting works for the city is it's an initial term of anywhere between 2 and 3 years, and then an optional 1-year extension for 2 times. They had already used all of their extensions. So when their contract expired is what prompted the issuance of the RFP.
Question. So as I'm listening, and I reviewed both of the contracts, the RFP has been put out. Today on the agenda is for discussion. Usually you have, did that discussion result as a motion was put on the floor for one of these, or the discussion is just based on the fact that you're using discussion in general, or in relation to voting, in relation to Robert's Rules of Order?
Correct. So the item was listed on the agenda for both legal service provider and investigative service providers, so that the board membership could exercise one of three options. Make a selection, which would require a motion and a vote and an identification of one specific provider, which would then trigger and begin the actual process of negotiating the contract. Deciding to wait for a future meeting to make that selection, to allow new members to get up to speed and additional members that may be coming in, or to reissue the request for proposal so we can try to get additional responses. Because we are limited in responses. We received 3 investigation firms' responses and 2 legal service provider responses.
Okay, so not as familiar, this is my first time, but question, my then point of order is, are you asking for a motion? And
No,
what are
this
those
isn't the Robert Rules Point of Order where you would do a motion, then discussion, and then a vote. The discussion is in a more generic term where we're just going to talk about it. It's not the formal Robert's Rule motion discussion thing where we're looking for a...
Correct, I hear
Okay.
that. However, based on Garrett's feedback and other feedback about waiting, should we make a motion and vote to say whether we will table it? We will,
I agree with Dr. Jones that it would be in the best interest of the board for procedural purposes for all 3 new business agenda items that you have decided to defer on for a future meeting, that you make a motion on that, it be seconded, and a vote be held so we can have an on-the-record collective will of the board. Because right now we have an informal collective decision of the board. That decision, the motion can, since it appears that the membership is interested in moving in the same direction for all 3 topics, we can make one motion for all 3 topics and vote all at once. That is up to the membership to make that decision. But I agree with Dr. Jones, it would be in the best interest to move on whether or not we want to make officer nominations or postpone for a future meeting, whether or not we want to select a provider for legal services, postpone for a future meeting, or reissue the RFP, or whether, in the same for the investigation service provider.
Does any member want to offer up a motion in that regard?
so on the matter of the legal service provider, I make a motion that we table discussion until additional CPBR committee members are on board. We should probably set a number. Maybe, is 7 the max?
So
9.
the board consists of 9 seats, and we are required to have 5 for business. So anywhere between 5 and 9, however you choose.
So I would recommend, if there are additional names coming forward, that we then wait for at least a minimum of 6 members prior to further discussion and voting on this matter.
Discussion?
Okay, so to clarify, the motion made by Dr. Jones is to postpone or to table further conversation and discussion on selecting a legal service provider until a 6th member is seated and vote eligible on this board. Is that correct, Dr. Jones?
I second.
We got to have discussion first. No one has any comments or discussion on her motion? Okay, it was seconded by Victor. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any abstentions or opposed? Fully carried. That means we either need a combined motion or 2 more
And
motions.
do you want to, Dr. Jones, are you of the same position for the investigation service providers as well?
Yes. So I can make a, and I would also say in regards to the nominations, or selection of officers. So I'll start with the nominations of officers, that we table the nomination of officers. I think I'm going to withdraw that motion because I don't think it's tabling, because nominations should be ongoing.
Correct. So just for a frame of reference for the newest members, The nomination process for officers for the board is they have to be nominated at a meeting, and then a full month has to pass before they can be elected. So I know in lots of public bodies will nominate and elect in the same meeting. That's just not the way it's structured for this board. I don't, in regards to whether or not to proceed with nominations, I believe the consensus based off of the conversation we've had is that members would prefer to defer that decision for a future meeting. Is that correct? So I think we could introduce somebody could make a motion, just something along those lines.
So I'll go back to revise that and say that we want also continue to table the selection of officers and to continue with a nomination period, and recommend that a nomination period is defined at the next meeting.
Okay.
Is that for all, was that for all three? Because we already voted on the one motion.
I'm talking about officer nomination.
Just now, okay.
So the motion before the board is to table officer nominations until the next meeting to engage in conversation at that time, correct?
I mean, my suggestion would be to have a time period, because you can go forever without seats being filled or what positions are being filled, and I'm not sure if that's a best position for any board, and especially something that's representing the residents of Albany. We want to make sure that we are in full force and ready to move forward with business properly.
And from a procedural standpoint and an operational standpoint, this board needs officers because the officers are the internal control mechanism of this board. I defer to membership on that process because the decision is the members' decision. I do not disagree with Dr. Jones's assessment that potentially postponing for one meeting would not be a bad idea. It'll give our two newest members an opportunity to better understand the board operations and their fellow members, while also affording the council an opportunity to nominate and seat additional members. However, that is your decision to make as a board. But Dr. Jones is correct. The best way to enact that decision would be to have somebody make a motion and a vote be held.
I would just like to say I agree.
Use your mic.
I would just like to say I agree. However, at this time, I don't believe we have any individuals who are interested in nominations. Currently, the members who are no longer on the board. So I would say postponing at least one meeting makes sense. I don't know if at the next meeting people will be more vocal about seeking a officer position, at which point we can then make nominations. But I don't know that we can say we can promise to make nominations when at this time we have no interest, or no interested parties have come forward. So I think the motion, which I'm comfortable making, is that we table this discussion. We put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So next meeting, we will discuss again officer nominations in the hopes that at that time, we will make nominations.
Yes, and my, thank you, and I had the same, and mine was that at the next meeting to discuss, to actually open the floor once again for nominations and have an ending date, so it's, at least it's on record that whether it's July, you know, there's a period for nominations, whenever it starts and ends. So there's a start and ending date, and then move forward from whatever those dates are, just so that it's clear.
Okay.
I think that's a good instinct and a good decision. I agree with that. So the motion before the board, as I understand it, is to table officer nominations and discussions until our next meeting, at which time we will reconsider the topic to determine whether or not we will proceed or postpone yet again.
Discussion? I got a question and a clarification. So does that mean for the next agenda, we'll put it on like the discussion here, or like we had it on before, where it was a formal executive session? Because we have to notice that ahead of time?
No, sir. The executive session that was entered in January was not related to officer nominations. It was related to a specific member of the board and whether or not they would continue to be a member of the board or should be nominated for an officer position. The executive session in January was not about whether or not to nominate officers.
Okay, well, my point was just procedurally for the next meeting, which way would we put it on there? So you're correct in correcting, but I'm trying to procedurally,
For the next meeting, there will be discussion of the officer nominations, and we will have this conversation again. If the decision of the board at the next meeting is to nominate officers, we will proceed through the officer nomination process. If the decision is to postpone it for a future date, we will postpone it for a future date.
okay, so that's not necessary for an executive session, for that decision.
There will not be an executive session related to selecting officers. That is not one of the enumerated reasons in the law for this board to enter executive session.
All righty. The motion has been offered. Discussion, I think, has commenced. All those in favor?
We need a second on the motion first.
That's a good point. Anybody second that motion? Second by Victor. All in favor? Say aye. Any opposed or abstain? All ayes.
And
All
I'll
right, the
come back
next-
to you one more time, Dr. Jones, related to the investigations firm.
I'd like to make a motion to table the discussion on the selection of an investigation firm until we have a minimum of 6 members seated on the board.
A second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Say aye. Any abstains or opposed? None? All right, we got through the new business. Awesome. Next, we're going to do a review of complaints. And we will start with an update from the Office of Professional Standards.
Seated behind me is Detective Lieutenant Peterson. For those of you who don't know, he will pretty much be your point of contact for the Office of Special Standards as it relates to the complaints. I just want to come up here, one, formally introduce myself for those who don't know me. Two, offer the invite for anyone that would like to come over to the police department to see how things are run as far as the Office of Special Standards go. I know we've had contact with Garrett in relation to that. I know there's some interest in getting the rest or a majority of the board seated before that meeting happens, but it is open if any of you wish to come over, review cases, what have you. We can walk you through the investigative process on our end of things. Another bit of information that I wanted to put out is, and this is more for the public, is around how the police department has been handling complaints while the CPRB has not been able to make quorum. Again, that is for public here, so that way they are aware. Office of Professional Standards has still been investigating the complaints. We've still been receiving the complaints. The complaints that have been lodged with the CPRB have been sent over to our office for investigation. The complaints that have been lodged with the police department have also been shared with the CPRB for purposes for further investigation on your end when the quorums and all that have been established. So I wanted to just reassure everyone that regardless of the quorum and the hearing, the formalized hearing of the cases, they have still been investigated from the police department end of things, and just to give grace while the board here kind of gets its feet underneath it and starts kind of getting spooled up. I don't have anything else right now to share, just for your own record as far as kind of how the Office of Professional Standards presents itself for these meetings. And historically what happens is we'll come up here, we'll share any new business that we have. We will offer stats as it relates to new cases received, cases closed, the status of cases, so that way it is put out publicly. So that way even if we close a case and it's not ready to be heard by the board, at least there's knowledge that case is moving its way through towards completion. So that's kind of how we operate from the Office of Professional Standards. It also opens us up for a moment for any direct questions from any of the members of the board. And we put forth any additional information, so I'll be happy to share that the Citizens Police Academy is now been posted. It's on the city website for any of those that are interested. The dates and the times and the information is all up there if anyone is interested in attending that. And currently the police department is looking forward to putting on an academy. It looks like it's going to be a pretty substantial academy size for us to hopefully bolster some of our numbers and get rid of some of the vacancies that we have in the department. So those, during the training process of those recruits, they do have community engagement, so any members of the community who are listening, or if any of you have any direct interaction with any members of the community, you'll probably be seeing some new faces during some of the community events as it relates to the police department. So I'll open it up for any members of the board if they have any questions directed towards me.
I have a question. So, our new, can you hear me? Okay, so our new point of contact will be Detective?
Yes. So Detective Lieutenant Peterson has taken my position within the office. He's the most direct point of contact. He has the most information, most hands-on involvement with the complaints. So if there's any questions directed towards the Office of Professional Standards, he's the point of contact for that from your end of things.
I've got a question. I'm thinking there's a gap between what the public understands, because we, as a board, and I'm okay taking heat, that we're not doing anything with respect to making officers pay for what they do, right? I think they don't quite understand that the police department has their own process, and you discipline officers when you know they make a mistake. So sometimes I think there's a little gap that maybe even on our side, once we get back to educating and going out to the public, to let them know that regardless of what we do, you folks are professionals, then you have a process. But I'm not sure people understand that.
Sure, so I can speak on that. So the police department's Office of Professional Standards is the investigative entity on the police department end as it relates to complaints. So any complaints of misconduct, rudeness, whatever have you, it can range to really anything. The police department is also responsible for its discipline. So the discipline lies with the chief. Our findings are presented to the chief, and the chief ultimately has the say as far as what discipline happens. So just because again, the quorums haven't been met or an investigation hasn't happened from the CPRB end of things, and that's not to inflame anything that's already going on. The police department still has that. We are still doing that. We're actively doing that. So for any complaints that have sustained charges to them that have not been heard yet, or if you all vote to ultimately not hear those cases in their entirety, just because that they haven't been heard by the board does not mean that the police department has not had some sort of action towards those employees as it relates to their complaint. So just to clarify any issues in relation to that. So again, we have the authority to do that. You know, you guys also have the investigative authority to oversee kind of our investigations, making sure that they're thorough, they're competent, and that what we are recommending for discipline is in line with what should be received. And ultimately, I know it's been sent over. I don't think it's been put on yet, but the disciplinary matrix as well, it's in accordance with that disciplinary matrix. I don't want to get too far ahead of things and what's on for future agendas or whatever have you, but just to kind of create some clarity as far as the police department's involvement, the CPRB's involvement as it relates to investigations and discipline.
So in other words, if we have a case that for whatever reason happens to go beyond the 120-day and we have to return it, in most, if not all the cases, your department has already issued discipline based upon your process of what you might have thought should happen, and you're not waiting for us to say, even with the new matrix that most people don't know about, you're not waiting for us to say they should get something done to them, because you've already may have done that.
Correct. So to lean into the 120-day and the purpose behind that is that there is a statute of essentially limitations, for lack of a better term, as it relates to discipline of an employee. So if it goes beyond a certain period of time, discipline cannot happen. So that's the purpose as to why there is a a statute set in there and a limitation as far as how long these investigations can be done on the OPS end of things and the CPRB end of things. So that's why, as Garrett mentioned, the ones that are beyond their 120 days, the police department can move forward with discipline. That's the purpose behind that. That's why that's written and codified that way. So that way it does not impede the ability for discipline to happen in a circumstance as to what happened if something falls out of quorum or something happens where the investigations can't continue on the oversight end.
Thank you. No other questions? Well, we will proceed to complaint review. First complaint is from member Morris, and that's CC 2025-072.
All right, I reviewed this complaint, which was received on December 22nd of 2025. The OPS detective assigned was Detective Adelan. I believe I pronounced that name correctly. I apologize if not. Basically, the complainant... Okay. Reviewed the complaint I'm reviewing was received on December 22nd, 2025. The OPS detective assigned was Detective Adelan. The complainant was alleging a failure to take a report. Basically, she alleged that when she arrived at the station, she was met with the officer, and the officer, she was attempting to make a criminal complaint but was unable to do so. This was reviewed by OPS, and they reviewed footage. There was no footage that was able to be found of this incident, so it was closed as not sustained. My review of the finding concurs with theirs. So that's, any questions? Is there a member from the community on this case who would like to speak at this time? All right, hearing none, do we vote? I would make a motion that we vote to continue the OPS's find. Oh, I didn't know, sorry, I didn't see him go.
I got it. Just call the next person.
All right, now that we're
Okay.
Now that we're all present, I'd like to make a motion that we vote to basically continue OPS's finding of not sustained on CC 2025-072.
Anybody second that motion?
Aye.
Members in favor? Aye, that was a motion. Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Any abstains or no votes? Okay, that carried. Next complaint up for review is CC 2025-034, and that is Mr. Person.
This is complaint number CC 202534. Detective assigned, Detective Stiles. I am the board member. Complaint was submitted July 1st, 2025. June 30th, 23:45 hours. Location of incident was 123 Log Drive, Albany, New York. Office of Allegation and Misconduct was Officer Cross. Summary of it, the review revealed that officer responded to a location after being dispatched to report of a dog being left outside in a hot day. Upon arriving, the officer observed the dog secure in a crate outside the residence of the porch. Officer Cross knocked on the door twice and rang the doorbell. A female occupant of the residence came to the door. Officer Cross explained why APD was present. While speaking with the female, the complainant approached the door and verbal argument ensued between the complainant and Officer Cross. During the verbal argument, the complainant demanded to know why Officer Cross knocked on the door. Officer Cross is heard saying, "I knocked on the door," and pushed the complainant in the chest and backwards. Additionally, as the verbal argument continued, Officer Cross heard remarking, "I don't need a badge or a gun to F you up." The complainant complained of chest pain and specifically requested Officer Cross call an ambulance several times. Officer Cross never made such a request. During the interaction, Officer Cross is heard calling the complaint a name. Foul language review revealed that the Officer Cross did not complete the required report for use of force. I concur with OPS findings with the following recommendation. Conduct standard was exonerated. Conduct standard consisting of profanity was sustained. Call handling failure to request medical attention sustained. Use of force was sustained. And a use of force failure to complete a report was sustained. Recommendation by board member, I recommend that Officer Cross be retained on an applicant policy and procedure and receive additional training of effective communication. Officer Cross should also lose 1 level credit.
Any questions?
Any questions from any of the members?
What is the statement you said, the last one, that he said something about a credit?
Yeah, that was the discipline of the officer, yes. He loses 1 level of credit.
What does that mean?
Lee, that's the, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, you can tell him, I don't know.
Well, it's a sanction. So we're developing a matrix where we can sort of, on our end, if we see something bad, we can say, you know what, that person should lose a leave credit, or they take something away. So that's a takeaway that from Victor recommending that he thinks this person should get some of their time taken away for what they did.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions? Is the complainant here at all have anything to say for this complaint? No? All right, so can we have a motion? I'll second that. I thought you made the motion when you... Yeah, I think he made the motion when he said his complaint. Just do it, give us another formal one just to make sure we got it. For your...
So I second it.
No, motion.
Huh? Oh, I make a to accept the fine.
And I will second that. All those in favor? Confirm by saying aye. 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 Any abstains or no? Motion carried. Thank you. Next complaint is CC 2025-54. Member Morris.
This was a motion that was received October 14th, 2025. The assigned OPS detective was Detective Adeline, and it was reviewed by myself, Member Morris. The location of the incident was 126 Arch Street in Albany, and the time and date was October 9th, 2025 at 1600 or 4 p.m. The complainant alleged that an officer was dismissive and had an unprofessional attitude when the complainant came in with her child to make a complaint or a report about an incident that occurred when the child was out of her custody with the child's father. The detective was interviewed and footage was received and reviewed covering this incident. Unfortunately, there was no audio available. However, the video did show that the complainant came in and that she spoke with the officer. From what was viewable, it did not appear that there was any incident or altercation, and the finding was that this matter be not sustained. The complaint was of conduct standards, professional, disrespectful, and intimidating. My review of what was available also agreed, and so I concurred with the findings. At this time, I'd like to ask if there is a member of the public here on this complaint that would like to speak to this. Okay. Seeing none, I will make the motion that, or I'll ask first if anyone on the board has questions of me that they'd like to discuss this complaint.
Yeah, the one question I had, and maybe you can't answer this, but it seems a little peculiar that there's no audio, and I'm hoping one of our people here can explain why in that part of the building, when the person is having a conversation with the officer, that there's no audio.
So I'll try to answer that for you. Both our stations do not have audio recording in the actual lobbies. It is just a physical restraint to that camera system. It is something we are aware of, and it is something that we are looking into. And yeah, there is no recording devices available for us to utilize.
And so you folks do not have a redundant system where that officer, if they have a camera on, would turn it on, knowing that you have this gap in actually recording? That seems a little peculiar.
No, it's a great point, and it is something we're aware of, and it's a policy issue that we are looking into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to make a motion. I move that we concur with the findings of yes, and that this complaint be closed as not sustained. The complaint being CC 2025-054.
Can I get a second? Victor? All those in favor? Say aye. One abstain. Mark, Mr. Member.
Member Mark.
Just one abstention.
And I believe I have the next complaint as well.
Yes, you do.
So I'll just jump right into that. All right. This complaint is CC 2025-069. It was received on November 21st, 2025. The assigned detective was Detective Adlan, and myself was, Member Morris was the reviewing CPRB member. The complaint was submitted on November 21st, 2025. The time of the incident was November 1st, 2025 at approximately 1:45 a.m. and the location was in Hamilton Street in Albany. Basically, the complainant alleged that they awoke after an interaction with police officers and they were in the hospital and they were injured. They were told that the officers involved had been punching them, and so they filed a complaint because they did not know what had occurred. Reviews were done and interviews were done with the officers on scene, and it was based on documentation. It appears that the officers were responding to a call of an individual who was potentially car theft or stealing from vehicles. When they approached, they found the complainant inside a vehicle. When they spoke with him, he appeared His responses appeared to indicate intoxication, and he began making verbal threats towards the officers. He was given several commands to exit the vehicle. He refused and, again, continued to make threats. He was then tactically removed from the vehicle and does appear to have sustained injuries in that removal. However, it does not appear that he sustained injuries from the officer striking him. The finding of OPS was that the use of force strike be exonerated for that reason, and the use of force causing injury be unfounded, as the injuries were occurred while the individual was basically resisting a lawful governmental instructions. OGA, I believe, is the penal code. After review of all the documentation as well as the videos, I did concur. I'm going to ask if at this time there's a member of the public who's here to speak on this complaint.
I believe the complainant is on Zoom. Would you like to make a comment? If so, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak at this time.
What had happened was pretty much as you just said. I was intoxicated in a vehicle, and a police officer did approach me. I did make a verbal comment threatening to strike him. However, my intoxication was talking, and that wasn't my intention at all. I wasn't showing aggression. Like, I wasn't about to strike or anything like that. But not even 2 minutes into the conversation, I was pulled out of the vehicle, put onto the floor, and body cam footage showed another police officer had me on the ground, while the original police officer that pulled me from the car struck me multiple times in the face. And despite your investigation saying that I didn't sustain injuries from that strike, I did gain 2 black eyes and a lot of swelling all over my face, so many cuts, and not just on my face, but I sustained injuries to my thumbs that still hurt me to this day. It's like nerve damage. I have scars all over my body from that day as well, and I was sent to the hospital without my consent. I'm not sure what the complaint board could help me or bring justice to this situation, but I at least want to get my story told, because I don't want this happening to someone else. I feel like the situation could have been handled a little bit more professionally, considering intoxication was already observed, and I was wearing a police officer costume that day, it being the night of Halloween. And, you know, this does change my view on the police department in general. I guess that's all I really have to say, but.
I appreciate your willingness to make comment. I will note I did review the video, and while I know that you feel that you did not display any visible signs of aggression. There were certain signs that were noted, such as making fists, and certain comments that were made which appear to have put the officers in concern. So I think that is why the findings are what they are, and I hope that you're okay. At this time, I'd like to ask if at this time, I'd like to thank you again for your complaint and your giving us the opportunity to review it and share with you our findings. I will make my motion at this time to basically close this complaint, CC 2025-0, I think it's 069, and concur with the findings of OPS, which are that the use of force is exonerated for strike, and the use of force causing injury is unfounded. Do I have a second?
Who was that on the second? You, Victor, or Dr. Jones? Okay, Victor on the second. Any discussion by the members? All those in favor say aye. Aye. One abstention and 4 ayes and 1 abstention. That is all we have for the complaints. However, we do have public comment. A couple people did come. And just by reading them?
Because they're being reviewed with, being closed without review.
All right, the last item before we go to our civilians is closure without review, last section. So we have CC 2026-003 was withdrawn. FS complaint out of jurisdiction, so no referral. RM complaint out of jurisdiction. FOIL request on that one. ES complaint out of jurisdiction, duplicate. MB complaint withdrawn, and KI complaint out of jurisdiction, referred to Albany County Sheriff's Office. So for those 6 complaints that were closed without review, I'm going to offer a motion that we accept that. That is the motion. Anybody second that?
I'll second.
All right. Member Morris, all those in favor say aye. Any abstains or noes? All ayes. Thank you. So before we adjourn public comments, we are going to start with Valerie Alexander, I believe is the name. So just clearly state your name and purpose, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Valerie Alexander. I'm a resident of the city of Albany, also a business owner in the city of Albany, and a mother of children in the city of Albany. And I'm here to make a statement in regards to the CPRB and Office of Professional Standards. Back in 2024, me and my child were, I call it mechanically assaulted in our home by 2 officers who were supposed to be responding to help me with my child, who was a habitual runaway. My daughter had been missing for a month, and she came that day, and she was going to leave again. So me and her case manager were trying to coordinate with the police for the whole day, and when we did, she did settle down. We called the police, excuse me. I did call the police to come and pick her up on the warrant from family court. Making sure that everything went smoothly, because we've had multiple interactions with the police department when it came to my daughter, and she was let go after pleads of telling them that, you know, my daughter's going to be back out in the street, there's sex trafficking involved. Those officers came in the home. One did try to help in the beginning while the others stood and watched us while we struggled with my daughter. And that officer eventually involved himself when my daughter started getting a little bit more out of control, and he started tasing her. And he tased her a matter of 8 times. And then when I intervened on the 3rd or 4th time, he actually tased me twice, and I was eventually arrested. Not knowing why I was arrested, he lied and said that I struck him, and I did not strike him at all. But come to find out that the Office of Professional Standards did take 8 months to interview these officers, which technically is past that 120 days, is very concerning. with the CPRB. I think that they should ultimately reach out to these individuals who are making these complaints in a timely manner as well, give them the opportunity to know what their rights are, how long the process takes. The CPRB did not reach out to me after multiple calls, stopping by. They were shut down for a period of time, which, you know, after a year and a half, I did start speaking to Garrett in regards to this, but we're well past, once again, that 120 mark. I just feel like when we're dealing with the public, there needs to be a lot more training that goes on with these officers, especially when they're dealing with situations involving minors and parents who are only seeking help, especially if that child is a persistent runaway. There's sex trafficking involved, and when they run away, most of these officers don't even ask for pictures. So they're not out here looking for our kids who had ran away, and that's why we have a lot of youth that are missing and continue to be missing, I believe, is because of what is going on. And I wanted to come here and speak my piece because I feel like I've been kind of paused for almost 2 years and getting my story out here. Hopefully within the next couple of months, I will have another opportunity to come in here and speak more about my case, and maybe someone will review my case and determine that we have not received justice. That officer had the opportunity to come to my house again and was very belligerent, disrespectful in my home, asked him to leave, he would not. So it's very concerning, especially having a young son who's growing up here. I want him to understand that these guys are here to protect us and keep us safe. And that's why I came.
Thank you for your comments. We're doing our best here. There's been a lot of transition on the board, as you know. All we can do is what we can here. I definitely feel for you. Any comments by any members? Does the OPS want to make any comment? We do have one member. Yes, go ahead.
Did you add, the second time you said the officer came back to your...
Not that day. More recently, as you know, these kids these days are pretty much with the court system and everything going on, the parents bear a grunt of, you know, the discipline, and this officer had the opportunity to come back into my home more recently within the last 2 months, and we experienced the same disrespect that we experienced then. Not the tasing, but just verbal, you know, assaulting my husband, trying to antagonize him, trying to bait him into, you know, kind of getting extra riled up. So, yeah.
Did you make a complaint again, or you had...
I didn't make a complaint again. Just based off of the experience that I've already had. Like I said, we're going on 2 years, and I haven't heard anything. I foiled some stuff, waiting for that to come in. One of the officers, Officer Stiles from the Office of Professional Conduct, reached out to me, and he kind of told me that the officer was disciplined, but I don't know what kind of discipline they hand out over there. I think it should be made public in some type of way, because we have victims out here who are feeling a sense of no justice, especially when we're dealing with children. And, you know, I just felt that it was wrong when me and my daughter got tased for us to experience that. Being that she's a minor, yeah, she's done some terrible things, but they should not come in there and have the authority to act like they are the ones who are going to discipline their child. They were there to do a job, and ultimately they did something way different.
Since that time, Ms. Alexander, has she been in any type of, is she still having some physical problems or psychological problems? Has she been in therapy or?
Yes, she's had a lot of mental health. She's 19 now. She's not in my home now. She took it upon herself to go to counseling. She's just trying to get herself together. She does have all 8 taser marks on her, as well as I have the 2 that I sustained on me. We bled for days from those tasers that we received. So yeah, there is still, damage to this day.
No other comments by the members? Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
I just want, Ms. Alexander, it takes a lot to come before the board and share your story in a public manner. Number one, I just say thank you, and that I speak for everyone, that you're heard. And I'm sure that moving forward, others that may deal with something similar will also be heard, and my hope is that process will move rapidly in a formal process. And again, I'm glad you showed up. We have to show up. You have to show up, and appreciate you, and just hope that your daughter continues to get what she needs to heal.
Thank you. If I can just make one more statement. I hear we keep adjourning appointments and all these things, and I understand you guys have a process. CPRB has a process. I just feel that there are a lot of families and complainants who are out here just looking for justice, and I've been waiting for the CPRB to finish their part of the investigation for a while. And I think from all the withdrawals of appointments and things like that, that has contributed. And I'm hoping to see that we can get this, if you call it quorum, together, so we can serve the community as we are supposed to be serving the community. Because if we keep going through this process, then ultimately this program does not make sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, please don't give up on the process. So when you had that other incident, just file the paperwork, because a lot of times, again, the paperwork doesn't always come through in government, but if you never file it and get it on, on the record too, that doesn't help. Because I believe the procedure is, if you voluntarily invite an officer into your home, you can voluntarily say, you know what, you need to leave. And unless there's a reason, like they see something going on where they can then investigate, they don't have the right to be in your house if you say leave. So that kind of complaint might have been something, again, if we had a quorum and if we were able to get to it. So that, please don't give up on the process, because it's all we have, right?
Yeah, that's all we got. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Next, public comment, Pierce Morris.
Nervous. How's everyone doing tonight? It's my first time attending. I just wanted to get a chance to tell my story. I'm a survivor of a number of police brutality incidences where it was excessive force. Right now, the last time being last 2025. Honestly, man, I just wanted to. I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to have survived, and hope to expire change and hopefully, you know, get a chance to tell my story and maybe get a chance to change some of the policies in the city.
Well, I'd say thank you, and part of our job, once we have a full working board, is to also help with recommendations on policies and things. So as we begin to try to interface more with the community, outreach, et cetera, and we have different committees that aren't functioning yet because we have such turnover, that's where some of your ideas and concepts where we could really help to maybe make some policy changes, because we are allowed to make recommendations to the police. It's up to them to accept it, but we definitely can do that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to thank you for your comment as well. I really would like to hear your story about really what happened. And it sounds to me like it ain't just happened to you once with this type of behavior or whatever the case may be. I'm sorry, say it again?
No, go ahead. Yeah, I've gone through a number of traumatic events, maybe 4 or 5, where I was, you know, I feel like there was excessive force.
So you know how to go about the process now and what happens and how you need to file a complaint? You know how to get in touch and file a complaint?
You know, I was unaware that this committee existed. I just recently, I believe, I met, well, I guess, I think they moved to, I think they're on Central now, right? Or they're on, I forget the address, but I just happened to be in there, and they said they had moved to that address. And
okay. So, you know, when you're ready to file a complaint about this.
I think I have a current complaint. I don't know if you guys have it in the archive. Let's see. Yes. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, I believe I sent you the complaint number for the original complaint from that.
Yep, yeah, I filed a complaint, and then, I guess, I wasn't sure if you guys had got it, so I guess, you know, I did it twice, and then you said it was you said it was a duplicate?
Yeah, the complaint is still in process.
Okay.
So if I remember correctly, it's still in the possession of the police.
Yeah.
And it just recently been given to the board.
Yeah, I know, you sent me the videos, the 2, I guess, you know, it wasn't, you know, I haven't had a chance to talk to you, I guess, you know, the video was kind of.
That's my information. You can give me a call tomorrow, and we can capture this offline.
Okay. All right.
And I'll help you figure out where we are in the process.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Pierce. Appreciate you, man. So that's all we have on our agenda. Can I have a member offer up a motion to adjourn? Victor with the motion. I will second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any abstains or noes on that? All ayes.